Your history books lied. They presented a world where power, innovation, empire were born in the marble halls of Rome and the debating chambers of Greece. They painted a picture of an Africa that was dark, dormant, waiting to be discovered. This narrative, repeated for centuries, is not just an omission. It is a fabrication. A calculated erasure of a vibrant, powerful truth. A story designed to justify conquest by pretending there was nothing there to conquer. You were taught that empire began in the marble halls of Greece and Rome, that the great strategists and diplomats of the ancient world all looked a certain way. But what if the most influential chapters of that history were deliberately torn out? Tonight, we unseal the records that empires tried to bury. The stories of African queens who commanded global trade, led armies, and founded dynasties that would last for millennia. If you watch for just the next 30 seconds, your understanding of history will change forever. Our journey begins in the mists of antiquity, around the 10th century BCE. Here, straddling the Red Sea and the lands we now know as Ethiopia and Yemen, a kingdom of extraordinary wealth and influence thrived. This was the kingdom of Sheba, a commercial powerhouse perfectly positioned at the crossroads of Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean world. Sheba's power wasn't forged from gold or silver, though it had plenty. Its true dominance came from a far more precious commodity, frankincense and myrrh. These aromatic resins, harvested from the gnarled trees of southern Arabia and the Horn of Africa, were the absolute lifeblood of the ancient world. They were the oil of their time, essential for sacred rituals, luxurious perfumes, and potent medicines from the temples of Egypt to the palaces of Mesopotamia. To control the source of these resins was to hold a monopoly on a vital global resource. It was to control an entire economy. At the heart of this empire of incense stood Makeda, a sovereign of legendary wisdom and sharp political acumen. The Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia's national epic, recalls her famous journey to meet King Solomon in Jerusalem. But this was no simple courtesy call, nor was it a quest for romance. It was a calculated act of high-stakes international strategy. She crossed the unforgiving deserts not as a supplicant, but as a peer. Her caravan was laden with spices, gold, and precious stones. A diplomatic gift, yes, but also an undeniable demonstration of Sheba's immense wealth and power. This was an embassy of equals. In Jerusalem, she didn't just flatter, she challenged. She traded riddles and engaged in deep debates on philosophy, statecraft, and policy, ultimately securing a trade and mutual defense pact that enriched both their realms for generations. Ethiopian tradition holds that from this union, her son Menelik I was born. He would return to Africa with the Ark of the Covenant, founding the Solomonic dynasty, a line of emperors that ruled Ethiopia until the fall of Haile Selassie in 1974. But as centuries passed, Europe began to rewrite her story. She was recast on pale canvases, her features softened and Europeanized. Colonial cartographers drew new maps, systematically severing Africa from its own glorious history. Yet the stones themselves cry out the truth. The Sabaean inscriptions, the monumental obelisks of Axum, and Ethiopia's vibrant living traditions all speak a different story. They speak of Makeda, an African queen, a commander of global trade, a practitioner of high-stakes diplomacy, and the founder of a house that would endure for 3,000 years. Her skin was black, her kingdom was African, and her legacy is undeniable. The very attempt to erase her, to diminish her, only confirms her power. We must see her clearly for who she was, a brilliant strategist, a master of commerce, and a founding mother of a nation. In the grand theater of antiquity, Makeda was a true ruler of her world. We journey south following the lifeblood of the Nile into the heart of ancient Nubia. Here, a formidable power was forged in the heat of the desert, the kingdom of Kush. This was no mere outpost of Egypt, it was a civilization in its own right, a hub of immense wealth controlling the trade routes of gold, ivory, and exotic goods flowing from the African interior. Its capital, Meroe, was a metropolis of industry and ambition. Its skyline was a forest of steep, slender pyramids, a unique architectural signature, but the true source of its power glowed day and night: the smelters. Kush was a master of iron, producing weapons and tools that gave it a decisive edge. For centuries, it stood as a powerful rival to its northern neighbor, at times even ruling over Egypt as the 25th dynasty of pharaohs. And at the apex of this kingdom reigned a line of rulers unlike any in the ancient world, the Kandakees. This wasn't a name, but a title of absolute authority, meaning Queen Mother, or Great Woman. They were warrior queens, supreme commanders of the army, and revered as living goddesses on earth. In a world dominated by kings and emperors, the Kandakees of Kush ruled with undisputed power. Their fame echoed across the ancient world. The Greek historian Strabo wrote of their ferocity. The Bible's Book of Acts mentions a high-ranking treasurer, serving a Candace, queen of the Ethiopians. A persistent legend, though unproven, claims that even Alexander the Great, faced with the prospect of battling a Kandakees army, chose to halt his southern conquest. Then, in 30 BCE, a new empire arrived on their doorstep. Rome conquered Egypt and declared it a province. With typical imperial arrogance, the Romans imposed heavy taxes and established a new border, encroaching on Kushite territory. They saw a kingdom ripe for exploitation. They fundamentally misjudged their new neighbor. The reigning Kandake was Amanirenas, a name that would soon be etched into Roman history. She was fierce, unbowed, and bore the scars of battle. Having lost an eye in combat, she would not suffer Roman indignity. In 24 BCE, while the Roman prefect was away on campaign in Arabia, Amanirenas saw her moment. She marshaled an army of 30,000 warriors and struck north into Roman Egypt. The invasion was swift, coordinated, and devastating. The Roman garrisons at Siene, Elephantine, and Philae were overwhelmed. The frontier collapsed. In a calculated act of defiance, Amanirenas ordered the statues of Emperor Augustus to be torn down. She carried his bronze head back to Meroe as a trophy, and, in the ultimate symbolic humiliation, buried it beneath the steps of a temple dedicated to victory. Every day, she and her people would literally walk over the image of the Roman emperor. Rome was now beneath her feet. The Roman response was furious. The general Petronius pushed south with 2 legions, retaking the fallen cities. But when he ventured into Kush itself, the war changed. For 5 bloody years, his legions were bled by guerrilla warfare, the unforgiving heat, and a terrain the Kushites knew intimately. Amanirenas' forces would not break. In 21 BCE, Rome did the unthinkable. It sued for peace. The resulting treaty was a stunning Kushite victory. All tax demands were dropped, the border was redrawn in Kush's favor, and Rome would never again attempt to conquer the kingdom. Amanirenas forced the world's greatest superpower to the negotiating table, and won. Unearthed by archaeologists in 1912, that very same bronze head now sits in the British Museum, a silent witness to the one-eyed queen who stared down an emperor and made Rome yield. And remember, Amanirenas was not an exception. The Kandaks were a lineage of powerful women who ruled for centuries, building pyramids, minting their own coins, and commanding history. Their very existence is a powerful rebuttal to the tired myth that Africa had no great queens who shaped the destiny of empires. Westward to the 16th century, northern Nigeria's Hausa city-states, centers of trade and learning, among them Zazzau. A princess named Amina, raised in council, forged in drill yards. When her brother died in 1576, the army chose Amina. She ascended not to keep peace but to conquer. Campaign after campaign, her borders swelling to command the trans-Saharan lifelines. With infantry, cavalry, 20,000 strong, Amina led from the front. From Hausaland to Nupe and Kwarafa, her standard rose, city after city. She innovated. Ganuwar Amina, earthen fortifications securing trade and tribute. Many still stand. 34 years of conquest etched into the land. She controlled salt, metals and horses. Wealth funneled through Zazzau. British chroniclers called her myth. Archaeology and the Kano Chronicle prove she was real. She was beholden to no one. Queen, conqueror, builder, strategist. Her dominance of north-south and east-west routes rewired West African power. Walls, routes, cities. Her signature remains in earth and memory. 17th century Central Africa, Portuguese muskets and slave ships. Ndongo's answer, Nzinga, brilliant, sidelined, indispensable. 1622, received with a floor mat while the governor sat on a throne. Her attendant became a human chair. Nzinga met his eyes, equal. She secured peace, briefly. 1624, Nzinga seized the throne. Portugal refused. A war began. She withdrew inland, reforged her state at Matamba. guerrilla tactics, lightning raids, supply lines cut, vanishing into jungle. She made her realm a haven for the enslaved. Thousands flocked to her banner, a multi-ethnic coalition, united by freedom. She leveraged European rivalries, allying with the Dutch to strike Portugal from sea and land. She took the title king, donned symbols of power, commanded loyalty, into her 60s, 70s, 80s, still leading, still undefeated. They called her demon and savage, but never victor over her. Nzinga died peacefully in 1663, unconquered. Matamba stood independent for centuries, a testament to her will. You were taught that history was written by men in marble halls, that empire began and ended with Rome or Britain. But what if the most powerful stories were deliberately buried? What if the records that empires tried to erase told a different story? From the spice courts of Arabia to the war jungles of Angola, a single pattern emerges, a force that shaped civilizations. It is the story of power, strategic intelligence, and an unyielding will to rule. This is not a fairy tale. This is the recovered history of Africa's warrior queens. In the 10th century BCE, there was Makeda, the queen of Sheba. More than a legend, she was a master diplomat whose trade alliance with King Solomon birthed a 3,000-year Solomonic dynasty in Ethiopia. Centuries later, there was Amanirenas of Kush. When the Roman Empire, the world's sole superpower, invaded her lands, this one-eyed warrior queen met them on the battlefield, defeated 3 Roman cohorts, and humbled an emperor, forcing a peace treaty on her terms. In the 16th century, Amina of Zazzau, the great conqueror. She commanded an army of 20,000, expanded her empire across West Africa, and built the famous earthen walls that still stand today, securing vital trade routes. And in the 17th century, Nzinga of Ndongo and Matamba, a brilliant military strategist and relentless liberator who fought the Portuguese slave trade for 4 decades and died undefeated in her 80s. These women were not exceptions. They were part of a tradition, like the Kandakes of Meroe, an entire dynasty of warrior queens who ruled for centuries. This is not myth. It is not folktale. It is history carved in stone, cast in bronze, and recorded in sacred text. Their world, pre-colonial Africa, was a tapestry of dynamic, complex, and powerful civilizations. So why don't we know their names? Because their erasure was a deliberate policy. To justify conquest, you must first invent an emptiness. Colonial historians whitened Makeda, dismissed Amanirenas as a barbarian, called Amina a myth, and painted Nzinga as a savage demon. Yet the facts remain. These rulers commanded armies of tens of thousands, controlled the global trade of gold, salt, and ivory, and defeated the greatest military powers of their day, from Rome to Portugal. Their very existence is a profound challenge to the version of history we were all taught. It forces us to ask, what else was hidden from us? Their legacy is one of incredible resilience. A story kept alive in oral histories passed through generations, in manuscripts hidden from colonial looters, and in monuments that refuse to vanish. True history, like a great river, can be dammed or diverted, but it always finds its way to the sea. The truth cannot be buried forever. Now, a dam of silence is breaking. It is our duty to unearth these stories, to speak their names, and to ensure they are never forgotten again. Makeda, Amanirenas, Amina, Nzinga, the Kandakes of Kush. These are not just names, they are pillars of world history, giants whose shadows span millennia. The throne of power has been occupied by black women. The battlefield has answered to their command, the course of empires bent to their will. For too long their crowns gathered dust in forgotten archives. To remember them is to challenge the narratives that shaped our world. It is to reclaim a legacy of strength and sovereignty. Remember their names, remember the truth they fought to preserve. The most revolutionary act is remembering. Unearthing their stories restores a vital part of our shared human story. Let their light guide us forward.